All right, so we've already established that the this keyword in JavaScript is dynamic and it changes depending on when you're using it or where you're using it. So if we use it within the global scope or within a regular function, then this is going to pertain to the window object. If we use it within a constructor function or a class, then we can use it to access properties and methods for that object, right? It pertains to the instance of that class or of that constructor function. If we use it in let's say in an event listener, then this is going to point to the element that the event was triggered on. Now, because there's so many different situations where this means something different, JavaScript gives us these methods that we can use to manually define what this keyword means or what it points to. And those three methods are call, bind, and apply. So we already looked at call. We used that when we did our prototypical inheritance, when we had a shape constructor function, and then we had a child constructor function that inherited it, and we wanted to call the parent constructor. We had to use call. Apply, we'll look at that later, but what I want to look at right now is bind. So bind will allow us to set this the value of this manually, and it returns a new function where this value is bound to whatever the value is that we pass in. So one common case for this is when we have callback functions, because callback functions are just their regular functions. So what I'm going to do to kind of explain or show what I'm trying to explain is I'm going to create a class called app, and I want to have a property in here. So I'm going to have a constructor function, and we'll set a property using this, and then dot, we'll say server name, and we'll set that to localhost. Okay, now if I have a method in here, let's call it get server name, and I just do let's just do a console log of this dot server name. So anywhere, any method I create, I'm able to use this keyword because that's going to pertain to the current object. And we have a property of server name. So if I come down here and I initialize or I instantiate my app by saying new app, and then I do a console, actually, I don't need to do a console log because I did it from within the method. So I can just say app.getServerName, and you'll see that it prints out localhost. Now, you can see I have a button here in the HTML. So what I want to do is click that button and then fire this off. So a common place to put your event listeners when you're using classes is in the constructor, because that runs automatically, right? Whenever I instantiate a new object, this constructor function runs. So in here, let's say document.query selector, and let's select the button. And I'm going to just add an event listener. I'm going to listen for a click. And then when that happens, I want to call this dot get server name. All right. And of course, we don't want to invoke it here. We're just passing it in. Oops. There we go. All right. So let's go ahead and try that. I'm just going to get rid of this here, though. So I'm going to click on this button, and you can see we get undefined. Now it called this dot get server name, right? And that's within our class. And we use this keyword with a property that is defined up here. However, we got undefined. The reason for that is because this is in a callback function, which is just called as just a regular function. So to fix this issue, we can use bind. So on this dot get server name, where we have it in our callback, we just want to add onto it dot bind. And whatever I pass in here is going to be what this is going to be inside of the method. And of course, I want it to be the current instance, so this, right? Now, if I save this and I click, we get localhost. All right, so when you want to do something like this where you have an event listener and you want to call a class method, if you're going to use this keyword, then you want to use bind. If you're not going to use that, right? If you're not going to use this and with a property or a method, then you don't have to do this. It's only if you want to use this. And just to show you, if I just console log this itself, so if I click, you see that it's going to be our app object. However, if I don't have bind here, and then I console log this, it's going to be the button, okay? Because that's the default. If you use an event listener and use the this keyword inside of the event handler, it's going to point to whatever the element is that that event was fired on. All right, so just be sure to use .bind and pass in this if you do want to use properties or methods within your class.